The obvious big L Blizzard has delivered these last few months since TBC launch, and also one of the few actual gameplay changes they made. With every positive change Blizzard has managed, this alone almost cancels all of them out, in my opinion. And they've taken a serious problem with the ARM team and botting, of course, but attacked it from the wrong angle. So they created like a whole new heap of actual game-breaking serious problems that made people not be able to play the game like it's intended. This change, I think, isn't even implemented now. They had to remove it because it just broke the game too much. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be worried about. This is actually what modern Blizzard can deliver. It's fucking really, really bad. Really, really bad. It should be so easy to gauge what these changes actually would do when you implement them with the anti-boosting measures. They're legit destroying dungeon gameplay, and also like inventive and skill-based solo gold farms, just entirely because Blizzard just cannot figure out how to fucking handle the RMT and boosting problem. The anti-mage boosting specifically can be argued is a good thing to like try to get away from. I'm not convinced that it is, but it can be argued. I think it definitely can be argued as well that it's like a natural part of the figured out WoW Classic game, and extremely skilled mage players should be allowed to boost for gold as well as boost their friends and outs, I guess. It's not like every single mage player can do the Mardon boosts or the Slave Pens boost. If you actually look at what Blizzard has developed for the classic game since 2019, you can get a pretty clear picture of what to expect of something like Classic Plus. Because I don't think just experiencing everything from original Classic launch up until Wrath or MOP if you play that, and the Season of Mastery, Season of Discovery, and now the Anniversary Realms, Hardcore Realms, whatever. It seems very easy to forget for the player base like what Blizzard is actually doing with these realms. It's not like they are hugely successful in their changes or when they add new features. And you also have the microtransaction thing, which is weird to call the $80 boost a microtransaction. That's like super mega macro transaction at that point. As well as the WoW token, right, which came to the original classic cycle somewhere in Wrath, I think. That's obviously been one of the main worries of the classic players since 2019, to have the modern Blizzard who just monetizes everything to hell. Some of the changes have been like easy home runs, I think, for Blizzard. Not because Blizzard themselves have such great ideas all the time, such as guild banks now in Anniversary TBC. I guess dual spec. I think everyone thinks it's a home run. For me, it's kinda in the middle. It's definitely very, very useful, but it takes away something about the meta progression of a character. I think having both specs and gear sets with you at all times means you're basically two characters. I would be very, very surprised if Classic Plus doesn't have a dual spec. I just really think it should be a thing where you have to be like inside a major city or inside an inn at least to be able to spec swap. One of those features added that I think completely Blizzard developed, and that was actually a good change, and that was the Chrono Boon. They dropped in like the pre-patch for TBC, or just a few weeks before the pre-patch of TBC. So we had like a week or two in vanilla with the Chrono Boons, and that was a huge improvement. Holy shit, it feels amazing to be able to save your ward buffs that way. So I think that's sort of good design decision from Blizzard. Although I think for the game it would be better just to fucking remove world buffs in raids. Even though I get it, it's fun as shit to play a warrior with full world buffs in vanilla. I get it. I made that for 2 years. It's amazing. It's so fun. World buffs are just too clunky to go and get with the fucking mind controls in Orgrimmar or killing NPCs in Stormwind to reset Onyxia Head or whatever the case may be. It's too clunky. The PvP ranking systems, I think, is a good change, but I realize that's not what everyone thinks. And I don't mean I think it's good that everyone can get the PvP gear that much easier now. I just think you should be able to progress your PvP rank all throughout. The original systems design is also too clunky, I think, to fit. It's a really interesting journey to take, even if it takes you 6, 7, 8 months to complete if you're not a hardcore player. I think it's a system that's a good change in the end. Season of Discovery was obviously a huge difference. the biggest feature launch in all of the classic games. I know Blizzard has stated publicly that Season of Discovery was meant to be like a testing round. They did not try to make a perfect game in any sense. They wanted to try stuff out, which is fair. Regardless of that, I stopped playing Season of Discovery after Phase 1. Phase 1 was very interesting. Everything from the level cap to the new raid was alright, I think. It wasn't bad at all. The PvP event wasn't great, but it was a cool experience. It was cool to run around Ashenvale with like hundreds of Alliance or hundreds of Horde, whatever faction you play. Even though the event wasn't amazing, it wasn't really that fun. If you did the PvP event a few times, it got old pretty quick. The best thing about the level caps, I don't think it was the raids. I don't think it was the PvP events. I think it was exactly the same thing that made Classic Beta in 2019 or 2018, whatever. What made that so great. Not everyone played original Classic Beta, of course. But I remember from that and from Season of Discovery, having a new meta to figure out was so fun. The biz list from Wowhead with running like Dead Mines and Wailing Caverns or doing the Stockades quests. That was the best part of the level capping in Season of Discovery, in my opinion. I didn't play any raids from after Phase 1. I'm not completely qualified to judge that, but from my experience in Phase 1, it wasn't necessarily the Blizzard created content that was the best part of that. Why I quit Season of Discovery, why that season or that project from Blizzard wasn't interesting enough to me was it was just too much stuff. Being level 25 and have like 10 new spells, it was just too much. It was just too bloated. It wasn't like a vanilla feeling anymore. It completely left the vanilla style of game with the simplicity and stuff. And not even only like the amount of spells. I don't think the spells or specs themselves were very good or interesting either. It felt like they just took everyone's favorite spells from other expansions and just crammed them all into classic vanilla season, whatever. Which caused the general experience for me, everything from like the rune system to the implementations of the new spells and class changes. It felt too much like playing a private server. It didn't feel like a true crisp quality experience. The thing that worries me the most is when Blizzard tries to attack a problem like the bot problem and the RMT problem by trying to like rebuild the game in some sense to fit their new idea structure. And these anti-boosting changes they made in TBC Anniversary, they were so bad. The minute I read those patch notes, I knew like, how the fuck is this gonna work? How the fuck are you gonna... It's very much part of the game to be able to reset a bad pull or to kite a bad pull for a long time or run out of the dungeon if you overpull or something. I don't know how developers at Blizzard can sit. Someone had this idea at a meeting or whatever and no one reacted enough to say, oh, but this is gonna mess up mages from boosting, but it's also gonna mess up lots of things for every single player playing every single class in the normal way, in like not a double mage boosting in Shadow Labs, just people playing dungeons like regular players. It was so obvious. I don't realize how Blizzard missed that. And maybe they didn't miss it, but they didn't have the authority or the execution to make it better, I guess. But that's what inherently worries me about modern Blizzard developing fresh and completely new content for this game that so many people love. Hardcore servers obviously a huge change Blizzard made too, but that as well was community created. We don't need to thank Blizzard for giving us hardcore as a mode. They just gave us something that the community already created and just made it official. Props to Blizzard though, like sure, give us official hardcore servers, but the concept itself is not developed by Blizzard, right? So you can't give them credit for that. I think people doesn't realize how fucking bad it is that Blizzard actually fundamentally changes how dungeons work in TBC to try to fend off the RMTs and the bots and the mage boosters. Account-wide raid attunement and the heroic keys, which also acts as a gold sink. Both of these are probably a positive change, but it makes dungeons obsolete earlier than necessary, I think, because if alts had to do everything as well, like the heroic key grind, the raid attunements and everything, the realm would be alive on a broader spectrum, I think, for a longer time. Heroics are basically dead already, we're in phase 2, and they will have a resurgence when it gets closer to the new badge gear in Sulamam patch, right? But I think again, like for a game design purpose, it's better long term for the realm to have these things be character specific. It makes it a lot easier to play an alt in TBC, which I guess is a good thing in some way. But if someone's gonna play an alt, is having to do the raid attunements and heroic keys again gonna stop you, or are just gonna do maybe one alt instead of 3 alts? If you're a player that likes to play alt, you're gonna play an alt regardless. Because at some point I also think all the attunements gets wiped, right? Is that also in Sulamam patch maybe? Where you don't need to have attunements for anything. And the heroic keys also gets downgraded where you only need to be honored, I think at least. So that's the catch-up. That's the catch-up mechanic in my opinion. You don't need to be like caught up on your alts while you play your main. It doesn't need to have to be on the exact same page as your main. That is not necessary. And I'm not gonna lie that these changes have made it easier for me as well to play alts. I was gonna play alts regardless, so this just means I'm gonna play my alts less because I'm not gonna do dungeon grinds. I'm just gonna get like the basic gear from dungeons and maybe badges, and then I'm going straight into raids, and then I won't play dungeons anymore on these characters. Yeah, the bloodlust changes, that's a good change, I think. That's a really good change. It was talk about changing this in Classic TBC 2021 as well, and I think they should have done that back then too. The group swap meta with heroism and bloodlust was just not. It was so clunky and unnatural, which people felt they had to do if they wanted to compete, but also not a good game design at all. The group finder tool that's in Anniversary Realms, I think is maybe the best implementation of everything, because it just takes the trade chat or the general chat and puts it in like an in-game system or an in-game tool, and I think generally everyone has a much better time finding groups with this system in place. Instant mail on your account is also, I think, a good change. I don't think it like changes the core gameplay or the core social structure if you can send instant mail between your own characters. I don't think that's a bad thing.